When I think of the word hero, I either think of Superman or a person who changed history for the better. Not only is the man that I'm about to tell you a war hero, but he also helped his enemies after their land was destroyed and they were facing devastation. Douglas MacArthur was born in 1880 in Little Rock, Arkansas, and he graduated at West Point and then went on to be an engineer in 1903. He was an engineer until 1905, and then he was sent to Tokyo, Japan with his father, who was the official observer over the Japanese military operations against Russia. During World War I in 1917, MacArthur was sent to France, where he pretty much distinguished himself as a military man. He distinguished himself at the Second Battle of the Marne, and then when the war was over in 1918, MacArthur was the youngest divisional commander in the field. After that, he then became chief of staff of the American Army in 1930, and remained at that position until 1935. The thing that amazes me about Douglas MacArthur is you would think that what I've told you so far is probably it, but it's not even close. After the attack on Pearl Harbor in World War II, MacArthur was put in charge of the Philippines, where he had to defend islands against Japanese attacks. And that was actually his first major fail because the Americans were forced out of the Philippine Islands. But it only made him more determined, and he actually went back in there with a plan the second time that he called island hopping. And what they would do, they would go into the larger islands in the Philippines, such as Iwo Jima and Okinawa, and leave the smaller islands to be abandoned by the Japanese. But unfortunately, there were still many casualties. Now that the islands were captured, the only other place in World War II to be taken over by the Americans and stop the war was Japan itself. And American intelligence estimated that around 1 million Americans would die if they would attack Japan. So that's when the atomic bomb was decided to be put into place by President Truman. And once they dropped, the two places that they were going to drop the bombs were Hiroshima or Hiroshima or whatever, and Nagasaki, which I don't really know how to say that, but...
You said exactly right.
Yes. Okay. After the first bomb was dropped, the Japanese still did not give up, and that's when they dropped the second bomb, and then that's when the Japanese surrendered. Douglas MacArthur was then promoted to Supreme Commander of the Allied Forces and was awarded the Medal of Honor in 1942. He was a huge part of Japan's recovery after the bombs had dropped. He established a democratic government in Japan at the time, and he helped in the rebuilding of Tokyo and Japan over there. After that, and actually an interesting thing that I learned was that right when Douglas MacArthur went to Japan, the very, very first thing he did was he made the Emperor of Japan, which his name was Hirohito, I think, and he made him announce on the radio that he was not a god and only a mortal to any surviving Japanese people there. After World War II came to a close, he was then the head of the United Nations, and they praised him for his brilliant military tactics in the Korean War. I followed that, but it wasn't until the communist China was invading the Korean Peninsula that he was actually fired because, well, they made him retire because President Truman tried to send a message to Douglas MacArthur to destroy the Yalu Bridge, which would make the Chinese unable to invade Korea, but that message never came to MacArthur, so the Chinese did get involved with the Korean War. If the bridge would have been destroyed, the number of men the Chinese had would never be able to cross the river. But unfortunately, Truman failed to give that knowledge to MacArthur. So with MacArthur, he was replaced by General Matthew Ridgway, but MacArthur still did try to testify to, because he was a real military man, he loved the military, so he tried to tell Truman that he never got the message, but he was still retired. Then once he came back to America, when he was retired, he went to Manhattan, and he retired as a 5-star general. He noticed in the Chicago Tribune, they had an article in there, and it stated that Truman was not fit to tie MacArthur's shoes, which he then went on through his retirement in Manhattan and died in 1964 at the age of 84. And who knows what the world would be like if there wasn't Douglas MacArthur as the military general. MacArthur will always be remembered as a brave, determined, and intelligent war hero.